Good day to all of you. I am Vivian Renee Job and Domingo from BFSC 30A, and together with my group mates, Carmelita Joy Masalungan and Therese Margaret Maranya, we will discuss the scientific and non scientific methods of human identification. So let's go now and see our table of contents, which includes the introduction, the identification process, and the conclusion. Introduction will tackle the importance of timely identification for unidentified living individuals and human remains, and the difference between missing persons and unidentified persons. The identification process will discuss the scientific and non scientific methods of human identification, also its limitations and features of each example. Finally, we have the conclusion, which will talk about the impact of technological advancements in identification techniques and the importance of integrating both scientific and non scientific approaches. So, let's formally start by discussing the importance of timely identification for unidentified living individuals and human remains. So, for unidentified living individuals, a positive identification is vital to reunite an unidentified living individual, with their family members. On the other hand, for the human remains, a positive identification is vital to help family members progress through the grieving process, providing some sense of relief in knowing that their loved one has been found. Also, in addition to that reason, sa unidentified living individual, yung mabilis na pag-identify ng kanilang identity ay pwedeng makatulong para sa medical treatment and care. Since for unidentified living individuals, timely identification is essential to ensure that they receive appropriate medical treatment and care. Pag alam na natin kung ano yung identity ng taong to, malalaman natin yung medical history niya, meron ba siyang certain allergies, pre-existing conditions na maaaring maka-impact sa magiging treatment outcome or decision, or pwede rin naman maka-improve sa magiging outcome ng pasyente. Aside from that, for the human remains, on the other hand, this is for criminal investigations, since in cases involving unidentified human remains, timely identification is critical for launching criminal investigations, apprehending perpetrators, and bringing closure to victims' families. Also, identifying victims may help uncover crucial evidence and lead to the resolution of cold cases. Last reason is it applies to both unidentified living individuals and for the human remains. This is for preventing misidentification. Timely identification reduces the risk of misidentification, which can have serious consequences, including legal, financial, and emotional repercussions. Misidentification can lead to wrongful arrests, mistaken identity and medical procedures, and improper disposition of human remains. So, in addition to that, I forgot to include the family notification and support, since identifying human remains or unidentified living individuals allows the family stop or uh, to stop or to prevent longer emotional distress and uncertainty for families. Pag alam na natin yung identity ng natagpuan nating human remains or just unidentified living individual, mas mabuti ito para sa mga nag-aabang na pamilya para hindi na sila ma-stress lalo at para alam na nila yung next steps na gagawin. So for that, since I have discussed this topic, we will now go to the meaning of the word identification, since na-discuss natin ang daming unidentified. So what is the meaning of identification? So yung identification could be defined as the individualization of a person to determine who they are. So this can be applied to living persons as well as to human remains in any state of preservation when their identity is unconfirmed or unknown, and implies the allocation of the correct name, identity to an unidentified person. So for that, what is the difference between missing person and unidentified person? Missing person is the identity of the person is known from a list of names of missing persons, but their fate and the whereabouts are unknown. On the other hand, unidentified person, the person, alive or dead, is physically present, but their identity is unknown. Normally, a dead person is not legally considered to be a person, but the term is used here is inclusive of both living and deceased individuals. So, in short, yung missing persons, meron tayong pagkakalalan, like may list of names tayo, pero wala yung body mismo. Wala tayong physical body. While on the other hand, yung unidentified person, meron naman tayong body like physically present, pero hindi natin alam kung sino siya. Wala tayong clue kung ano yung identity ng taong to. So for that, identification is achieved through the process of comparison of information. And dyan na papasok yung pagkuha natin ng information. Gagamit na tayo ng scientific ways of identification. So scientific identification, it includes all methods of identification involve comparing antemortem data to postmortem evidence. Although a presumed identification is often established by contextual evidence, ideally antemortem biometric data of the individual should be obtained and compared to the postmortem evidence to establish a scientific identification. So we prepared seven scientific ways of human identification as well as seven general methods of non-scientific method of human identification. So for scientific, we have radiology, anthropology, DNA identification, retinal scanning, iris recognition, proteomics, and odontology analysis. Let's go first to the first method, which is the radiology. So it involves the study and comparison of the unique patterns of ridges, furrows, and minutiae present on the fingertips, palms, and soles of individuals. So in short, yung radiology ay forensic science technique na ginagamit primarily sa field ng fingerprint analysis para ma-identify natin kung sino tong tao. So actually, we had a subject back when we were second year, first semester, if that's right, as far as I can remember. It is called the subject of dactyloscopy. So we have different laboratory activities that we identify different rich characteristics. So for fingerprint identification, radiology plays a crucial role in fingerprint analysis, where experts examine the ridges and minutiae, the ridge characteristics such as ridge endings, bifurcations, dots, and enclosures to identify and match fingerprints found at crime scenes to those in fingerprint databases. So here are the examples of ridge characteristics. We have the core, the delta, the crossover, and so on and so forth. So we also have its limitations as well as the future. So for its limitations, partial prints, radiology may face challenges in cases where only partial fingerprints are only available. So as the limited information might make it difficult to achieve a conclusive match. In addition to that, poor quality prints also, since fingerprints obtained from crime scenes or other sources may be of poor quality due to factors like smudging, distortion, or partial impressions, which can hinder accurate analysis and comparisons. A third is the complexity of analysis. Analyzing and comparing rich patterns requires specialized training and expertise. So, human error or subjective interpretation may occur, leading to potential inaccuracies. Lastly, is the database limitation. So, yung effectiveness ng radiology, nakadepende siya sa availability nung quality ng fingerprint na nakastore sa databases for comparison. So, in some cases, pag limited or outdated na yung databases na meron tayo, mahahadlangan niya yung identification efforts na nakuha natin using the radiology method. While on the other hand, we also have its future directions. So, advancement in technology, the integration with other biometrics, since itong radiology, pwede siyang ma-integrate with other biometric modalities such as iris scanning, which will be discussed later, facial recognition to enhance the robustness of human identification systems and overcome limitations specific to fingerprint analysis. Third is the research and pattern recognition. So, ongoing research and pattern recognition and machine learning holds promise for developing more sophisticated algorithms capable of identifying and matching rich patterns with higher accuracy and reliability. Next is the interdisciplinary collaboration. Pwede mag-collab ang forensic scientists, biometric experts, computer scientists, and other relevant disciplines that can foster innovation and interdisciplinary approaches to addressing challenges in radiology and human identification. Lastly is the quality enhancement techniques. So the techniques for enhancing the quality of fingerprint impressions, such as chemical treatments or advanced imaging technologies, can help overcome challenges associated with poor quality prints. And then we have our second method, which is the anthropology. Anthropology combined with radiology relies on the unique characteristics of the skeleton to compare with antemortem medical imaging and records. So pag pinagsama yung anthropology and radiology, yung radiographs of skeletal anatomy, bony anomalies, hilt fractures, pathological lesions, medical surgical hardware and implants, or unusual qualities of the skeleton can be used to confirm identification. However, many individuals do not have antemortem skeletal imaging or the images may not be available. So for that, we have the subsequent modern applications have developed concurrent to the use of computed tomography and the forensic morgue for autopsy procedures by pathologists, or a technique for displaying a representation of a cross section through a human body or other solid object using X rays or ultrasound. Right now, we have this virtual anthropology. uh, the scientists use to digitize and then they compare, materialize, reconstruct, expose, and finally share. So this is the computed tomography, which is, yeah, as I have said earlier, this is the technique used for displaying a representation of a cross section through a human body, or it may be another solid object using X-rays or ultrasound. Next is the Virtopsy. So, Virtopsy represents a powerful, non invasive supplement alternative to traditional autopsy practices where dissection may not be allowable due to religious objection or amongst other reasons. So for this, these are used for one reason is for trauma analysis. Anthropologists examine skeletal trauma to determine possible causes of death, as well as to reconstruct events leading to injuries. This information can be critical in forensic investigations. Another reason is simply for biological profile. Since ang anthropology ay inaaral niya yung different bones, so by analyzing this bones or skeletal features, yung anthropologists kaya niyang mag-create ng biological profile of an individual na andun na kung ano yung kasarian niya, ano yung ancestry niya, pwede na rin ma-estimate kung ano yung age. So this biological profile helps narrow down potential matches when attempting to identify human remains. Like the radiology, this method also have its limitations and future. For limitations, subjectivity and interpretation, for that, both anthropology and radiology involve interpretation of visual data, which can be subjective also. Different experts may interpret skeletal features or radiological findings differently, leading to inconsistencies in identification. Second is the cost and accessibility. Alam naman natin na X-ray pa nga lang, CT scans, yung mga MRI scans, mahal siya at hindi siya laging available sa lahat. It requires specialized equipment and expertise. So this can limit their availability and especially in resource limited settings. Third is degradation of remains. So in cases where human remains are degraded or poorly preserved, radiological imaging may not provide clear or conclusive results. Decay, trauma, or environmental factors can obscure skeletal structure and compromise the accuracy of radiological interpretation. Last is the ethical consideration. Radiological imaging exposes individuals to ionizing radiation, which raises ethical concerns, particularly in cases involving living individuals or vulnerable populations, such as children or pregnant women. However, we have also its future directions. Like the radiology, we have the advancement in imaging technology. Kasi meron na, nagkakaroon na tayo ng higher resolution imaging, the 3D reconstruction techniques, and yung iba portable imaging devices. This can improve the quality and accessibility of radiological data for human identification purposes. Second is the integration of multimodal data. So combining radiological imaging with other modalities such as the 3D surface scanning, the molecular analysis can provide more comprehensive dataset for human identification. Thus, it overcomes the limitations of individual techniques. Third is the machine learning and artificial intelligence. So, utilizing machine learning algorithms and artificial intelligence for automated analysis of physiological and anthropological data can enhance efficiency and accuracy in human identification. Last is the virtual anthropology. As I have discussed earlier, like the virtopsy, which one of the virtual technology techniques, such as virtual reconstruction of skeletal remains using imaging data, allow for non-destructive analysis and visualization of anatomical features. Yung approach na to, pwede siyang maging collaborative research din at para maging more education pursue in human identification. Next method is the DNA identification. So, yung DNA identification, para rin siya sa comparative analysis since ang forensic DNA analysis, it includes the comparing DNA profiles obtained from evidence samples with those of known individuals such as suspect or missing persons. By analyzing similarities and differences between DNA profiles, investigators can determine whether a match exists and establish the identity of an individual. Helpful din tong DNA identification mostly sa mga missing person cases. Yung DNA analysis, sobrang laking tulong niya or yung role niya ay very crucial since identifying missing persons, especially when traditional methods are not feasible due to decomposition, trauma, or other factors. Comparing DNA samples from unidentified remains with reference samples from relatives or other personal effects helps in confirming the identity of the missing individuals. Etong DNA analysis, very helpful rin siya as we have also discussed this in our subject called Mass Fatality Investigation. It is very helpful in mass disasters and catastrophes since in mass disasters or other events such as airplane crashes or natural disasters, DNA analysis facilitates the identification of victims by comparing DNA profiles from recovered remains with reference samples from relatives. This process aids in providing closure to families and in forensic investigations. So, like the other two discussed, we also have its limitations and future. So, sa limitations niya, we have the sample quantity. Yung success kasi ng DNA analysis, nakadepende rin siya dun sa quantity at quality nung nakuhang sample. So, 'pag contaminated siya or low quality yung sample na nakuha, makakaapekto siya din sa accuracy or puwedeng maging inconclusive yung result. Second is the human error. Since yung DNA analysis, maraming steps yan, maraming kailangang pagdaanan, yung sample collection, yung extraction, yung amplification, and lastly, the interpretation. Yung human error, 'pag nangyari yun sa kahit anong stage, wala na, maapektuhan niya yung next stage at it can lead to inaccuracies or biases, potentially impacting the reliability of the results. Third is the privacy concerns, since as DNA databases grow and genetic information becomes more accessible, concerns about privacy, consent, and the potential misuse of genetic data have emerged. Safeguarding sensitive genetic information and ensuring ethical practices or critical considerations. Lastly, is the ethnicity and ancestry estimation. While DNA analysis can provide valuable information about an individual's ancestry and ethnicity, these estimations are probabilistic and subject to interpretation. Factors such as population and admixture and genetic drift can complicate ancestry inference. So we also have its future directions. So future directions given na yung advancement in technology, since eto nga pag nakuha natin itong mga advancement na 'to, mas may improve nito yung speed, yung accuracy, at saka yung cost effectiveness ng DNA analysis for human identification. Second is the enhanced bioinformatics tools. So advancement in bioinformatic tools and computational algorithms for analyzing DNA data can improve and the interpretation of complex genetic information, including ancestry inference, kinship analysis, and phenotype prediction. Third is the integration with other biometric modalities. So, pwede rin katulad nitong nasa radiology and yung kaninang diniscuss, pwede rin siya collab sa ibang biometric modalities such as fingerprint analysis, facial recognition, iris scanning na nakakapag-enhance ng accuracy ng human identification system mismo. So, lalo na 'to sa mga case na hindi naman laging available or limited lang yung sample ng DNA. Lastly is the ethical and legal frameworks. So, establishing robust ethical and legal frameworks for the collection, storage, and use of genetic data is essential to address privacy concerns and ensure responsible practices in DNA analysis for human identification. Next is the retinal scan. So, retinal scanning is a biometric identification method that involves capturing an image of the unique patterns of blood vessels located at the back of the eye, or what we called the retina. So, retinal scans offer a high level of accuracy in identifying individuals. The patterns of blood vessels in the retina are highly unique and stable throughout a person's life, making retinal scans one of the most reliable biometric methods for identification. Next is it is for the reason of forensic traceability. So, in criminal investigations, retinal scans leave behind a traceable record that can be used as evidence in court. This record can help establish the presence of a suspect at the crime scene or refute alibis, providing crucial information for law enforcement agencies and legal proceedings. Next reason is an inability to fake all art or alter. So, unlike other forms of identification, such as fingerprints or facial features, the retinal pattern cannot be easily faked or altered. Kasi yung marami ng ibang ginagawa para ma-alter or maging fake yung identification such as fingerprints, kung ano-ano ginagawa like destruction, sinusunog nila yung fingerprint nila, dine-destroy nila yung kamay nila. Pero ito, 'pag itong retinal scanning, merong inherent security feature that it it is only the retinal scanning particularly valuable in criminal crime investigation, as it is resistant to fraudulent attempts to deceive the system. Ganun siya ka-powerful and accurate. How Ayan. So, however, before we go to the limitations and feature, this is the video on how the retinal scan is being conducted. natin makita kung paano kino-conduct yung, retinal scanning, meron din siyang, limitations and future directions as well, like the other methods discussed. So, yung limitations niya, puwede siyang, invasive procedure din siya. Like, retinal scanning typically requires individuals to undergo an invasive procedure involving exposure to bright light and close proximity to the scanning device. So, nakita niyo naman kanina kung ano yung patient's view. Like, this may cause discomfort or inconvenience, especially for individuals with sensitive eyes or medical conditions. Second is the health concern. Like, may hindi lahat ng tao pwedeng mag-undergo nitong retinal scanning since some individuals may have health concerns or medical conditions that prevent from them from undergoing this retinal scanning, such as eye diseases, injuries, or surgeries. So, in such cases, retinal scanning may not be a viable option for identification. Third is cost and complexity. So, alam naman natin, like, given na mahal yung mga ganitong equipment, itong retinal scanning technology, mahal siyang i-maintain, mahal siyang makuha. Tapos, kailangan niya pa, required pa yung specialized training at expertise ng magko-conduct. So, this may limit its widespread adoption, particularly in resource-constrained environments or for applications with limited budgets. Fourth is the false rejection rate. Retinal scanning systems may have a false rejection rate where legitimate individuals are incorrectly denied access due to factors such as poor image quality, variations in lighting conditions, or misalignment during scanning. However, we have its future direction. So, sa future direction, sana meron na siyang non-invasive techniques na yung advancement sa retinal scanning, pwede siyang mag-lead naman sa development na meron na tayong magiging techniques na makakabawas ng discomfort or inconveniency dun sa individuals na mag-undergo ng procedure. So, non-invasive approaches could enhance user acceptance and expand the applicability of retinal scanning in various settings. Second is miniaturization and portability. So, for this, retinal scanning devices and the development of portable solution could make retinal scanning more accessible and versatile for use in different environments, including mobile and remote applications. Third is the biometric fusion. Fusion of retinal scanning with other biometric data, such as iris patterns or voice recognition, could improve the accuracy and reliability of identification systems by combining multiple biometric factors for authentication. Lastly is the enhanced security features that it incorporating enhanced security features such as encryption protocols, secure data storage mechanisms, and multi-factor authentication can strengthen the security and privacy of retinal scanning systems, addressing concerns about data protection and unauthorized access. So instead na fingerprint, like, 'di ba uso yung may mga building na nagre-require ng biometric, such as fingerprint, may future din tong retinal scanning na pwedeng yung mata na lang natin yung gamitin para ma-unlock or makapag-authorize na maka-enter sa isang establishment. And the other scientific ways or methods of human identification will be discussed by my next group, which is Carmelita Joy Maslungan.
Thank you, Ms. Vivian Domingo, and I am Carmelita Joy Masilungan, and I'll carry on with the report. So next in scientific methods of human identification is iris recognition. So what is iris recognition? It is a biometric technology that analyzes the unique patterns of the iris or the colored part of the eye for identification purposes. The iris develops patterns in the womb and remains stable throughout life, making it a highly individual characteristic. And the process of iris recognition involves several key steps. First is image capture. A high-resolution camera captures a digital image of the iris, and these cameras often employ specialized lighting to ensure optimal image quality. And then pattern extraction, wherein specialized algorithms extract the unique iris features, including the details of the colored stroma and the collarette or the darker ring around the pupil. and then template creation, wherein a mathematical expression of the iris pattern called a template is created. And this template acts like a digital fingerprint of the iris, capturing its essential details in a compact form suitable for matching purposes. And then lastly is matching. And during identification, the captured iris image is compared to a stored template or from a database or enrollment process to determine a match. And the high similarity score indicates a potential match between the captured image and a template in a database. And here is an image of an iris recognition system being used for identification purposes. The camera is capturing a high-resolution image of the iris, and the acquisition of an image of the iris is the initial stage of the iris recognition process, and the person's iris is photographed in a number of high-quality photographs. The photo should, however, clearly show the complete eye, especially the iris and pupil, and the procedure of noise reduction is avoided with a good and clear image as well as faults in computing. And remember that an eyelid, eyelash, pupil, and other irrelevant components of the acquired image, they should be removed. The three steps in this level are iris localization, segmentation, normalization, and enhancement. And the advantages of iris recognition are high accuracy, wherein iris patterns are highly unique and stable throughout life, leading to very accurate identification with a low false acceptance rate or FAR, meaning minimal chance of mistakenly identifying someone else. And also, it is non-intrusive. Unlike fingerprint scanning, iris images can be captured from a distance without physical contact, and images can be captured from a short distance, making it convenient and user-friendly. And it is also difficult to spoof because the iris is protected within the eye, making it difficult to forge or replicate for fraudulent purposes. So it offers a significant layer of protection against spoofing attempts. And replicating the intricate iris patterns for fraudulent purposes is extremely challenging. And lastly, fast processing. So modern systems can perform matching very quickly. Matching captured images against a database can be achieved in a matter of seconds. And the next is the limitations of iris recognition. So first is cost. So iris recognition systems can be expensive to implement and maintain. The technology requires specialized cameras, powerful computing resources, and robust databases. And and also the next limitation is database issues. So the accuracy relies on a well-maintained database of iris templates, and incomplete or inaccurate databases can lead to false positives or negatives. And then lastly, lighting conditions. So poor lighting or obstructions like eyelashes can affect image quality and matching accuracy. And for future advancements, ongoing research and development are continuously improving iris recognition technology, and also multimodal identification. So iris recognition can be combined with other biometric modalities like fingerprint or facial recognition to create even more robust identification systems. And this can enhance security by requiring multiple factors to match for successful identification, and also improve technology and advancement in camera technology, image processing algorithms, and iris template creation methods can further improve the accuracy, speed, and efficiency of iris recognition system. And then next is proteomics. Proteomics is a large-scale study of all proteins within an organism or biological sample. It focuses on identifying, characterizing, and quantifying these proteins, providing a comprehensive picture of the cellular activity and physiological state of the sample. So the process of proteomics involves several key steps. First is sample collection. Biological evidence is collected from a crime scene or investigation, such as blood, hair, tissue fragments, or body fluids. And the next is protein extraction. So specialized techniques are used to isolate proteins from the collected sample. And then after that is separation and identification. Techniques like liquid chromatography mass spectrometry separate the extracted proteins based on their physical properties. And the mass spectrometer then analyzes each protein to identify its unique characteristics. And then there's data analysis, wherein the resulting data from the mass spectrometer is analyzed using bioinformatics tools to identify specific proteins, their abundance, and potential modifications. And then they will interpret, or there will be interpretation. Forensic scientists interpret the protein profile based on existing databases and knowledge of protein expression in different tissues and under various conditions. And this information can be used for or species identification, body fluid differentiation, or postmortem interval estimation. And then next is the advantages of proteomics in human identification. While DNA analysis remains the gold standard for human identification, this offers valuable advantages in certain scenarios. First is complementary to DNA analysis. So proteomics can provide valuable information when DNA analysis is limited or inconclusive. And DNA can degrade over time, especially in challenging environments. In cases where DNA is absent, fragmented, or compromised, it can analyze proteins which are often more resilient than DNA. And also, proteomic analysis offers a broader picture of biological samples, revealing not just the identity but also the physiological state of the individual. So it provides detailed information. And proteomics can differentiate between different types of body fluids or tissues found at the crime scene. This can be helpful in investigations involving mixed samples or determining the origin of biological evidence. And then lastly is post-mortem interval estimation. While not as definitive as some other methods, it can offer clues about the time elapsed since death by analyzing changes in protein expression and degradation patterns. So just remember that proteomics is a complement to DNA analysis, not a replacement. It's particularly valuable when DNA is unavailable or inconclusive due to degradation. And here are some limitations of proteomics in human identification. First is standardization. Compared to DNA analysis, uh, the the techniques used here are still under development, and standardization across laboratories is ongoing. And there are also limitation on database challenges, or database wherein there are database challenges, and building comprehensive protein databases for forensic applications is an ongoing task. And it also have a limitation on cost and expertise. Implementing this proteomics requires specialized equipment and skilled personnel, making it less readily available than some other methods. And the future advancement of proteomics is enhanced accuracy and specific specificity, and it involves advanced protein markers wherein researchers actively identify new protein markers that are more specific to individuals or biological condition, and improve database development, standardized protocols. And the next is expanding application. So it can be applied to postmortem interval estimation, case evidence analysis, and disease association. And then lastly is technological advancement, wherein there would be advanced instrumentation, artificial intelligence integration, and miniaturization, wherein it can provide proteomic devices could enable on-site analysis of biological evidence, speeding up the investigations. And then next is, or the last on scientific methods of human identification, is odontology analysis. Odontology is the study of teeth, wherein it plays a crucial role in scientific methods of human identification. When DNA analysis is unavailable or inconclusive, not just proteomics but also at teeth and dental work can provide valuable information for identifying individuals. So, panoramic dental x-rays are a key tool used by forensic odontologists. So, how odontology analysis is used? So, first is examination of teeth. A forensic odontologist will visually examine the recovered teeth and noting any unique features like missing or noting any unique features like missing teeth, crowding, chipping, or fractures. And then next is dental x-ray analysis. So panoramic dental x-rays provide a comprehensive view of all teeth in the upper and lower jaws. So these x-rays reveal details like root morphology or the shape or presence of unerupted teeth, development defects, and past dental work. And then lastly is comparison with dental records. If available, pre-mortem dental records such as x-rays, charts, treatment notes from a dentist or odontist are compared orthodontists are compared to the recovered teeth and x-rays. Matching features between the two sets of records threaten the identification case. And here are some advantages of odontology analysis. First is applicable in various scenarios. So, odontology is valuable when DNA evidence is unavailable due to decomposition, fire, or insufficient biological matter. It can also be used in MFI or mass fatality incidents where DNA analysis may be overwhelmed. And the next is it is complementary to DNA analysis. So when available, dental analysis can support DNA identification by providing additional points of comparison. And odontology analysis is fast and reliable. So it can be conducted relatively quickly compared to some DNA profiling methods. And here are some limitations of odontology analysis. So first is reliance on pre-mortem records. So the accuracy of identification using odontology depends heavily on the availability and quality of pre-mortem dental records, and also limited information. Odontology analysis alone may not be sufficient for conclusive identification, especially in cases with common dental features. And there are challenges with immature dentition. Identifying very young children or individuals with incomplete dentition can be more challenging using odontology alone. And here are some future advancements on odontology. First is digital imaging and 3D reconstruction. Digital dental x-rays and 3D imaging techniques can provide more detailed and comprehensive view of teeth and dental work, facilitating better comparison and identification. And also, advanced microscopy. High-powered microscopes and specialized imaging techniques may reveal previously undetectable features on teeth, offering additional identification markers. And the next is integration with other technologies such as DNA analysis and facial reconstruction. Combining dental analysis with DNA profiling can create a powerful comprehensive identification approach, and information from dental analysis can be used in conjunction with other forensic methods to create more accurate facial reconstruction of unidentified individuals. And then lastly is database development. Building comprehensive databases of dental information including x-rays and treatment records could significantly enhance the effectiveness of odontology analysis. And now let's go to non-scientific identification. So beyond scientific analysis, non-scientific methods also aid in human identification. These methods rely on witness recognition, personal belongings, and historical information about the missing or deceased individual. While subjective and dependent on available details, they can provide vital leads in missing person cases, mass disasters, and situations where traditional scientific methods are inconclusive. From a neighbor recognizing a familiar face to a family member identifying a treasured watch, these methods offer invaluable human connections that can aid in the identification process. And eyewitness. So this is the first non-scientific method for identification. And first is eyewitness testimony. So it can be a valuable starting point for investigations, but it's not foolproof. Law enforcement carefully evaluates eyewitness accounts alongside other evidence such as security footage, alibis, and physical characteristics to build a stronger case for identification. And here are the advantages of eyewitness testimony. So first is initial leads. Eyewitness accounts can be crucial in providing initial leads, especially when a witness recognizes a familiar face or a distinctive feature of the missing or deceased person. This can be particularly helpful in missing person cases where time of the essence. And next is details and characteristics. So witnesses may offer valuable details about the individual's appearance at the time of the sighting. This can include clothing, hairstyle, accessories, or other characteristics that can help narrow down the search and identify potential matches. And here are some limitations of eyewitness testimony. So first is memory error. So human memory is not infallible. Factors like stress, poor lighting, or time pressure during the sighting can lead to errors in memory and inaccurate recall of details. And also suggestibility. Memories can be influenced by external factors like leading questions or exposure to media reports. This can lead to witnesses unconsciously altering their accounts to fit a certain narrative. And then next is specificity. Witness accounts may lack the necessary specificity required for conclusive identification. Descriptions may be vague or generic, making it difficult to distinguish the individual from others with similar features. And the future advancement of eyewitness testimony as cognitive interviewing techniques. So, specialized interviewing techniques can be employed to minimize memory errors and elicit more accurate and detailed information from witnesses. And also technological advancement or in emerging technologies like virtual reality or memory retrieval tools might play a role in refreshing or solidifying witness memories in the future. And also focus on consistency. Greater emphasis may be placed on the consistency of details across multiple witness accounts to strengthen the credibility of eyewitness testimony. And remember that eyewitness testimony can be a valuable tool, but it should be treated with caution and evaluated alongside with other evidence for accurate identification. And then next is photo identification. So photo identification plays a significant role in non-scientific methods of human identification. The widespread use of photos and the ease of sharing them digitally can significantly increase the chances of a successful identification, especially when combined with other methods. And here are some types of photo identification. First is the government issued IDs. So this include driver's license, passports, or national identity cards. They contain a photograph of the individual along with biographical information like name, date of birth, and address. And the next is personal photos. So like family photos, school pictures, or social media profile pictures can also be helpful for identification, especially when provided by family members or friends who know the missing or deceased person well. And these are the advantages of photo identification. First is the widespread recognition. So photos offer a more readily recognizable image compared to verbal descriptions, allowing a wider range of people to potentially identify the missing or deceased person. And also detailed information. So photos can capture details about a person's appearance such as facial features or hairstyles or distinctive markings which can aid in identification. And next is accessibility. In today's digital age, photos can be easily shared electronically through social media or online platforms, which can increase the reach of identification efforts. And then here are some limitations. First is time sensitivity. So a person's appearance can change over time, especially for missing persons who may have been absent for a long period. So photos may not accurately reflect their current appearance. And also photo quality. So the quality of the photo can significantly impact its use or usefulness for identification. So there are blurry, outdated, or poorly lit photos. It can be or it may be difficult to recognize. And lastly is limited availability. So in some cases, particularly for unidentified deceased individuals, photos may not be readily available, hindering identification efforts. And here are the feature of photo identification. So first is facial recognition technology. So advancements in facial recognition software will allow for more sophisticated analysis of photos, potentially enabling identification even with slight changes in appearance due to aging or disguise. However, ethical considerations and potential biases in these algorithms need careful attention. And the next is social media integration. So secure integration with social media platforms could allow for more automated comparisons of missing person photos with profiles on these platforms, potentially leading to quicker identification. And the next is missing person databases. Centralized databases containing high quality photos and detailed information about missing persons can be readily accessed by law enforcement and the public, facilitating our faster recognition and reporting. And the next is deep fake detection. As deep fakes or realistic AI generated videos or photos become more sophisticated, tools to detect them will be crucial to ensure the authenticity of photos used for identification. And then next is 3D facial reconstruction. In some cases, 3D facial reconstruction generated from existing photos can be used to create a more lifelike representation of the missing person, potentially aiding in recognition. And then lastly is global collaboration. And developing standardized protocols and fostering international collaboration for sharing missing person photos can significantly improve identification efforts across borders. So that is for scientific and non-scientific identification, and allow the next reporter to continue the report.
Hello everyone, I'm Margaret Maranya and I'll be continuing the presentation for non-scientific methods on human identification. So the next is signature verification. So signature verification involves visually inspecting signatures or using specialized software to analyze those signatures. It aims to authenticate identity based on the signature's uniqueness. And characteristics such as stroke pattern, size, pressure, and rhythm are compared against reference signatures or standard signatures in order to establish identity. So the limitations and future oh, so the limitations and future of this is forgery, variations, human error. So for limitations, so yung forgery is there are certain signatures na madali kasing ma-forge and pag magaling yung forger or they are a skilled forger, madali nilang mare-replicate yung signature na yun with accuracy. And ang nangyayari is pwedeng ma-undermine yung reliability ng signature verification but as well as malito yung examiner kung yung certain signature na ba to is nagbe-belong talaga dito sa certain na tao na to. Next is yung variations. Ang signatures natin, they can vary significantly over time or pwedeng nagbabago din yung the way they look based on different contexts such as kung mabilis ba yung panunulat nila at the time of writing that signature, pwede din um, iba yung type of ballpen na gamit nila dun sa pagsulat ng signature na yun. And that makes the verification challenging kasi hindi nga nagiging consistent lagi yung ating signatures. And lastly is human error. And this is yung mistakes that can occur due interpretation kasi pag hindi magaling yung taong nag-interpret ng mga signatures, pwedeng magkaroon ng oversight dun sa kanilang magiging result. So, pwedeng yung isang akala nilang signature na to, nagbe-belong dito sa person na to, masabi nila nagbe-belong talaga pero in reality, hindi naman siya. So, for future use is integration of biometric technologies. This is combining yung signature analysis with other biometric data para ma-determine talaga kung sino may-ari ng signature. Next is AI-powered document analysis. This is utilizing artificial intelligence to enhance accuracy and efficiency in signature verification process. Like, hindi lang siya mano-mano na. Pwedeng gumamit ng AI para kahit pa paano ma-speed up yung process ng identification. Pero, syempre, it's AI. So, kailangan pa din ng human intervention in order to determine yung proper identification talaga kasi hindi naman always and all the time accurate talaga si ating AI. And next is non-intrusive methods. There are certain methods sa signature verification na nakakasira or nagiging harmful dun sa specimen na ginagamit. Nagamit sila ng mga chemicals to really check yung identification. So, na may mga ini-integrate na mga non-intrusive methods para hindi masira yung specimen na ginagamit nila. Next is voice recognition. So, voice recognition analyzes yung mga voice characteristics such as pitch, tone, and speech patterns. And dito, gumagamit sila ng audio samples or voice recording against stored voice prints to verify identity. So, kino-compare nila yung mga voice recording to other sampled voice recording to determine sino ba may-ari ng voice na yan. Kasi lahat tayo may mga unique ways on how we say certain words and there are others na medyo raspy yung voice, pwedeng high-pitched, pwedeng more feminine, more masculine yung kanilang voice. So, for limitations is noise spoofing, impersonation, and language. So, for noise is, hindi naman lagi na yung voice recording or yung audio sample is very clear yung pagsasalita. There's a chance na magkaroon ng mga background noises such as music or pwedeng choppy lang talaga yung audio sample that can interfere with voice recognition accuracy and especially din pala kung yung audio sample na yun was taken in a crowd environment kung saan may nagsasalita din. So, pwedeng maka-affect talaga siya sa pag-identify. Next is spoofing. This is yung using advanced technology that can mimic voices. So, pwedeng ang ginawa nila is nag-compile sila ng mga certain videos na nagsasabi yung tao na to ng certain words. Tapos, ang ginagawa, kina-compile nila to make this one sentence na akala mo sinabi ng tao pero in reality, inedit lang siya. Like, ni-manipulate lang yung mga words na sinasabi niya to create a new sentence. So, ang nangyayari is, sa spoofing na allow yung mga taong gumawa nun na ma-bypass yung voice recognition systems. Next is impersonation. So, familiar naman tayo sa tinatawag na voice acting, right? So, dito, may mga tao na magaling sila mag-impersonate. They can mimic yung mga voice patterns or the way a certain person speaks closely enough na pwedeng ma-fool yung ating mga voice recognition systems. And lastly is language. So, ang mostly na mga voice recognition systems is naka-target sila towards the English language. Other languages are not detected. Parang wala masyado katulad sa Filipino, wala masyadong voice recognition patterns sa Philippine language. And dahil also sa language, kasama din dito is yung variations dun sa accents and dialects. Kahit na English siya magsalita, pero medyo let's say Southern yung dialect niya, or pwedeng from an English country siya na merong medyo heavy na dialect or accent na ginagamit, na nagiging pose siya as challenges for recognition systems. So for future use is, number one is AI integration. So this is utilizing artificial intelligence to continuously improve voice recognition algorithms. So same kanina doon sa signature na gamit ng AI for accuracy. Pero syempre, we still need human intervention in order to do yung accurate talaga. Next is multilingual models. This is yung paggamit, this is creating other voice recognition models for other languages. Yun nga, hindi lang siya towards English. It also focuses on other languages such as Spanish, Chinese, or let's say, pwedeng Vietnamese and others. So the next is personal belongings. So for personal belongings is the examination of mga items owned or used by the individual as unique identifiers, kasi nga since sila yung gumagamit nito, pwedeng yung mga certain items nito, syempre merong certain how do I say this? May mga certain signs na sa kanila may-ari. So, for personal belongings, this includes documents such as IDs, passports, or pwedeng clothing such as yung shoes natin or t-shirts natin, or accessories and electronic devices such as our phones. So, for personal belongings, ginagawa siya, basically, i-ask yung any family member or any person na dun sa suspected person na may-ari ng personal belongings to identify kung siya ba talaga yung may-ari ng belonging na yun. So for limitations is loss, accuracy, reliability, and chain of custody. So for loss is there's a chance kasi na personal belongings can be misplaced or stolen. So pwede siyang mawala or pwede siyang manakaw, kaya nagkakaroon ng potential misuse for identity fraud. So pwedeng, yun nga, dahil nanakaw siya, pwedeng may magpanggap na, for example, yung cellphone mo, nanakaw siya. So, yung tao nagnakaw na, pwedeng magpanggap na ikaw, and aakalain sa investigation na syempre, ikaw yung may gamit nun dahil nga phone mo, pero in reality, iba na pala yung gumamit. Next is accuracy. Identifying individuals solely based on personal belongings may not always be accurate or reliable, especially if the items are shared or duplicated. So, kung may extra copy ng item na yun, pwedeng maka-impede pa siya sa identification mo. Next is reliability. The authenticity of identifying information and personal belongings can be questionable, especially with the rise of counterfeit documents. And lastly, chain of custody. Maintaining the integrity and security of personal belongings during the identification process can be challenging, raising concerns about tampering and manipulation. For the future naman, blockchain authentication. This is implementing blockchain technology to enhance security and traceability of personal belongings used for identification process. Next is smart tagging. This is utilizing smart tagging technology to embed digital identifiers with personal belongings. And lastly is ancillary information, integrating additional contextual information related to personal belongings to strengthen the reliability and accuracy of identification process. So, ang personal belongings kasi pwede mo din siyang gamitin for the other methods of identification. So, for example, dun sa, let's say, sa physical and visual description, pwedeng sabihin na the person was wearing a baseball cap na color blue. And sa personal belongings, sa determine nila na merong baseball cap na color blue na item tong certain person na to, na sakto na ganitong size. So, pwedeng magamit yung personal belongings to those other methods. Next is physical and visual description. So for physical and visual description, this is identifying individuals based on their physical appearance. And those physical appearances can include their height, weight, hair color, etc. Ito yung, so physical or visual description, ito yung tinatanong yung tao na what was yung parang naalala nilang itsura, like anong height ng kamag-anak nila, or for example, kung sa robbery incident, pwede nilang tanongin kung anong, sabihin natin, race yung certain na person na yun. Pwede nila sabihin na Caucasian, pwedeng blonde hair, pwedeng black hair, pwedeng blue-eyed, pwedeng brown-eyed, etc. So, for the limitation, wait. So, sa physical and visual description din pala, dito yung paggawa nung tinatawag nating facial reconstruction. Basically, based dun sa mga physical descriptions ng tao, pwede natin i-recreate yung ano ba yung face ng taong dinedescribe. And the other is, this one on the right, is yung facial composite. So, ito is yung pag-form ng face based on parang a series of other parang mga hairs. Like, binubuo yung pinaka-face ng tao lang. Whereas dito kasi sa facial reconstruction, everything from the bone size to the nose, nire-recreate nila para ma-identify yung person. So, for limitations is subjectivity, uniqueness, and memory bias. So, for subjectivity is yung descriptions kasi can be influenced by individual perception and biases. So, pwedeng pag tinanong anong height ng tao, pwedeng sabihin na 6-footer when in reality, pwedeng nasa 5'7" lang siya and nakala niyang 6-footer kasi maliit siya. Or pwede din naman na akala, pwede din na akala niya like lalaki yung person pero in reality, androgynous lang talaga itsura niya or tapos mukha lang siyang guy. So, next is uniqueness. So, physical trait may not always be unique to a single individual, leading to potential misidentification. So, yun. Even though we all have our own unique faces or unique parts, characteristics of our face, hindi, there are certain parts naman na magkakaparehas tayo. So, pag katulad sinabi na sa visual, sa description na matangos yung ilong ng tao, hindi naman accurately din sinasabi nito kung gaano tangos ba yung ilong nila or kung akala or combined with subjectivity, akala nila matangos when in reality, hindi naman talaga sobrang tangos ng ilong nila, pwedeng may pagkapango din. Akala lang nila matangos from that certain angle na nakita nila yung person na yun. And next is memory bias. Recollection of physical features can be accurate or distorted over time. So, like with pag tinatry natin mag-recall ng certain memories of our lives, di ba, may mga certain memories na nasa-skew. So, sa pag-visual and physical description naman, pwede din ma-skew yung pagkakaalala nila dun sa person na tinatry identify. So, for future use is surveillance tech advancements. This is an advancement in surveillance technology such as yung mga CCTVs natin na pwede siya magamit as facial recognition cameras to enhance the accuracy and efficiency of visual identification. Next is integration of biometric data. Incorporating biometric data from physical attributes into identification process for more reliable and comprehensive identification. And next is AI-powered generative and reconstruction. So, dito naman din is using artificial intelligence for facial reconstruction and for facial composites. Pero syempre, kailangan pa din natin ng human intervention para ma-accurately identify yung tao. And lastly is facial recognition. So, facial recognition involves capturing faces, detecting facial landmarks, and comparing against a database. The next is identifies individuals based on facial structure pattern. So, anong pinagkaiba nito dun sa visual and physical and visual description? So, dito sa facial recognition is yung pinakamukha lang talaga ng tao. Whereas sa physical description kasi, pwede mo din kasing i-mention yung, yun nga, yung body size nila na pwedeng medyo chubby, pwedeng muscular build. Tapos, kasama din dun yung, sa tingin nila, anong age gap ng taong yon. So, whereas dito sa facial recognition, solely sa face siya nakapo-focus. And this one uses technology such as yung mga cameras in order to be conducted. So, here is an example of facial recognition. Nagamit sila ng mga cameras para makita nila kung, katulad dito sa example na to, kung tong tao ba to ay nasa watch list ng police or this person is high-ranking or important. And then dito din, tinitingnan yung bawat pattern ng mukha natin, like each patterns of the face para ma-accurately determine talaga. Whereas sa physical description, hindi naman natin malalaman agad-agad yung bawat pattern ng mukha ng tao. Like, we can only give so much information na kahit na sobrang accurate yung pagkakadescribe natin, pwedeng maging vague pa din and hindi makatulong sa identification. So, for limitations and future, so for limitations, lighting, expression, race, and privacy concerns. So, for lighting is hindi lahat naman ng um, picture or sometimes yung facial recognition system ay nasa magandang lighting conditions. And dahil doon, pwede makalid sa potential misidentification. Di ba? Pag madilim yung paligid natin, pwedeng nag-iiba yung itsura natin, inaakala natin na ibang tao tong certain person na to pag hindi proper yung kanilang lighting. Next is expressions. Facial expressions can vary, making it challenging to match faces accurately, especially in dynamic environments. Next is race biases in the facial recognition algorithms can result in higher error rates for certain racial or ethnic groups. Example of this would be yung alam na nating Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. Since almost similar yung kanilang facial structures, medyo nagiging difficult to identify um, within those um, racial groups. Also, kahit nga minsan, kahit yung mga, even though they are in the same race, pwedeng nalilito pa din tayo sa kanilang identity since halos may iba magkakamukha talaga. Next is privacy concerns. So, since yung facial technology is, yun nga, ginagamit yung picture mo and sinasurveillance ka gamit yung mga picture mo, nagkakaroon ng ethical and legal implications siya kasi nga, since parang pinipicturean ka nila, nawawala yung right mo to privacy. And so, yun yung nagiging limitation niya. Now, for future is improve algorithms and hardware. This is um, improvement dun sa mga ginagamit na facial recognition systems para ma-enhance yung efficiency and identification. Next is establishment of image databases. Creating a comprehensive database since nga kailangan ng database para yung mga face na nire-recognize is dun siya kino-compare. Oh, pero this could also be a limitation as well, yung pag-create ng database na to kasi nga it affects yung privacy natin. Next is high resolution imaging and 3D scanning. This is utilizing those techniques to capture more detailed facial features for more precise identification. So lastly is our conclusion. So for our conclusion, we have discussed the scientific and non-scientific methods for identification. For our scientific methods, we have 7, which is the friction ridge analysis or fingerprints, anthropology and radiology, DNA identification, retinal scan, iris recognition, proteomics, odontology analysis, which includes panoramic dental x-rays. For our non-scientific methods, we have eyewitness testimony, photo identification, signature verification, voice recognition, um, physical visual description, and facial recognition. And for our conclusion, all we have to remember is that human identification is a critical process that serves various purposes from law enforcement to disaster response. But both scientific and non-scientific methods play essential roles in this endeavor. While scientific methods such as yung DNA analysis, DNA identification, or anthropology or radiology uh, offer accuracy, and reliability. Non-scientific methods such as facial recognition and personal belongings provide practical solutions for identification. Now, both methods have advancements in technology that enhances precision efficiency in identification, but remember that there are ethical considerations that must always be concerned, such as yung privacy concerns, consent, and potential biases that must be ensured to be addressed in order to have a fair and just identification practice. And ultimately, the most important aspect of human identification is the proper usage of it. Whether scientific or non-scientific method, yung ginagawa natin, the primary goal remains the same, to reunite individuals with their family or loved ones, or to help identify the victims in order to speed up yung grieving process nila, and by prioritizing accuracy, ethics, and the well-being of those involved, this can ensure the proper human identification and serve its purpose effectively sa ating society or kung saan man siya kailangan. So that's all for our report. Thank you for listening.